Crisps and crumbles are super easy and they fit well within my dessert strategy. What I like to do is make a whole batch of topping for a crisp and to freeze it. And whenever the urge strikes me, I could easily throw together a simple crisp or crumble. It's also a lot of fun that when you have friends and family over, you could actually throw together a pretty tasty dessert in no time flat, because you actually have the crisp frozen and on hand, and all you need to do is cut up some fruit, bake it, Bob's your uncle, dessert's ready in 30 minutes. The inspiration for this recipe is from simplydeliciousfood.com. I've included a link in the description below to the original recipe, but I've made a few modifications based on my preferences. Let's get to the ingredients. The recipe calls for flour, and because I want to eat less gluten in my diet, I use gluten-free flour, Bob's Red Mill. But one of the things is that gluten-free flour on its own imparts a grainy texture on the crisp. So I mix with flour, and that yields a more pleasing texture. Rolled oats, brown sugar, slivered almonds, butter, and add a pinch of cinnamon. My preference is to go to Asian markets and pick up the cinnamon, because I find that the cinnamons from the Indian subcontinent do tend to be much better for baking and are less sharp, whereas the ones from Southeast Asia are really good in savory dishes. My final modification is a pinch of salt, because salt simply heightens all of the lovely flavors that are in the crisp, as well as whatever fruit you're going to be using. The first thing I'm going to do is melt the butter. The recipe calls for half a cup of butter, which is one of these sticks, and as I'm making double the amount, so that way I could always have crisp topping in the fridge, I'm going to do 1 full cup of butter. And let's put that in the microwave. As baking is more precise, you have to be careful with your measurements. 1 cup of gluten-free flour. One of the tips I always do to get it precise is I use the side of the bag to get it to the desired measurement. There you go. 1 cup. 1 cup of flour. And the nice thing about crisps, as precise as the measurement you have, there's a lot of leeway for margin of error, and you could easily adjust the flavor within the fruit when you make it. 1 cup of oats. At this point, I'm going to give this a quick stir to make sure that the oats and the flours are evenly distributed. Brown sugar is normally 3/4 a cup, but because we're doubling the recipe, we're going to need 1.5 cups. Half a cup. And again, a little less sugar is not a bad thing. Typically, as a substitute for brown sugar, I like to use coconut sugar, which has a lower glycemic index. Give it a quick stir to distribute evenly. Two teaspoons of cinnamon. I'm going to say one thing that I really like are my measuring spoons. I keep 2 sets of these, and they're super useful when you're cooking. I have a link in the description below on where to get them. Again, give a mix, distribute everything evenly. Let's put a pinch of salt now. The second to last thing is 2 cups of almonds. I use the blanched sliced ones, but you could also get the sliced ones, which are similar in shape, with the outer husk on, and actually that adds a lovely texture to a crisp. Again, as long as we are in the ballpark, measurements are generally precise. At this stage, we're going to move over to a stirring spoon. I like a silicone one. And that just gets everything well distributed and ready for the final step, which is the inclusion of the melted butter. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautifully melted. At this point, there's no better way to do this than rolling up your sleeves and pouring that butter in and mixing this by hand. Don't be shy, put the whole thing in. And now a bit of elbow grease, and this crisp topping will come together. And you really want to just pinch it to get that butter well distributed and everything nicely combined. Because when you bake this, you want to get those nice little clumpy elements that get super crisp and add that pleasing mild crunch in your mouth, in addition to what a baked fruit. Just keep mixing until it has a nice, pleasant feel and it doesn't feel greasy. A good way to know that your crisp topping is done and ready to be used, grab a handful, squeeze together, and it holds together. And it just flakes apart nicely. As always with Ziploc bags, when you open it, turn down the lip, because again, you don't want to contaminate the seal. And we're going to put this in here, handful by handful. And when you get to that point when you feel you can control what's in the container, and as always, get out as much air as you can. That's ready to be used anytime you want. All you need to do is pull out of your freezer. Let's move on to making an apple crisp. So a crisp is basically some form of cooked fruit with that crumbly topping. And today we're going to be making an apple crisp. So I am going to be using a combination of Envies, Ambrosias, and Fujis. Really what you want to be using is tart apples. They are firmer in flesh and they just cook better. Using the principles of the crisp, you could use almost any firm fruit with that crumbly topping. What you need to do though is you need to figure out what your aromatic spices are going to do, how you're going to use them to match up whatever fruit you're using with the crisp topping. Beyond the fruit, the ingredients are fairly simple. A good quality vanilla, butter, brown sugar. Again, one of my favorite substitutes is coconut sugar. Pinch salt, and to make sure the fruit doesn't brown, I always include a squeeze of lemon, but you could also use citric acid. Let's peel the apples. First thing, got to use a good peeler. I use Victorinox on the angle peeler. Look below and you'll see a link to this product. And I love it because it's super sharp, and the one I had before lasted me almost 20 years. There's two ways of doing apples. One is simply to go down the side like this, and at the end to go around the outside and complete the peeling. But there's also a really handy technique, compliments of Trent, our cameraman's uncle. You stick the fork straight down the center, hold it in place, and as you rotate, you can peel all the apple really easily, and you reduce the risk of cutting yourself. Once we're done, we're going to cut this in half, and another quarter. And this is how I core my apples. I take that extra little bit of skin there, I pull towards me, and I take that out. And before we slice up the apples, we're going to put the quarters in there. And I always, as I discussed, add a little bit of lemon juice. So that way the apples stay fresh and do not brown. At this time, we slice the apples longitudinally. I'm a bit of a geography geek, so forgive me for using that expression. But it literally is along the longitude, cutting towards the center, very much like an onion. So that way you can get even sized slices and everything will cook easily. As you can see, this does take a bit of work. And that really reinforces why I pursue this dessert strategy. Anything that you want to digest with a bit extra sugar should take a little bit of work. Maybe get a little bit of a workout in between while you're doing it. So when it comes down to the strategy, the ease of it is more about what you have on hand, but it still has to take some effort to make. Another critical part of the strategy is, if you notice, I'm actually cutting a lot of apples. So I'm going to use some of these apples for another dish. That'll be the subject matter of another video. "12 apples, peeled." Let's go to the stove. In cooking the apples, we need to start with a caramel. To make a caramel requires some simple ingredients. Just over 2/3 of a cup for the amount of apples I've cut of brown sugar, about 4 to 5 tablespoons of butter, bit of vanilla. I like to add a little bit more cinnamon to reinforce that cinnamony flavor that's in the crisp topping, and a pinch of salt. This time, to actually play off the different flavors of salt, I'm using sea salt. At this point, we start by melting the butter. Oh yeah. You could add the sugar at this point, and it will still melt. At this time, we'd add our pinch of salt. And once the caramel becomes almost liquid, we can add the apples. It looks like a lot of apples, but by the time it cooks down and it gets to that point where it just becomes soft and ready for baking, it will be most probably about 2/3 this pot. Nice coating on that. Oh yeah. I could have picked a better pot, eh? At this time, we add a healthy sprinkle of cinnamon. Again, this is just my regular South Asian cinnamon in a old container. And now we're going to add the vanilla. There you go. At this point, give it a stir. And what happens at this point is we just put the lid on and let the cooking and the magic of time do its job. At this point, the apples are almost ready. You can see that the liquid is almost syrupy and the apples are cooked and soft and they're ready to be baked. Now we are going to put the cooked apples into a Pyrex dish. And I chose this size of dish because, again, with the dessert strategy, you only want to make enough to satisfy. That's going to make for a hearty dish. Again, watch the liquid. We're now going to put our topping onto the apples. Be liberal with it. The more that goes on, the crunchier it is. Even it out. Oh yeah, baby. Maybe add a little bit more. Smooth that out. And one of the bonuses of this recipe is we're going to use a toaster oven. Let's put her inside. And I have this set for 390 degrees Fahrenheit for 22 minutes. With the rest of this, I'm going to make waffles. Look up and below in the description to get the recipe for that. Alternatively, you can also make another crisp and give it to a friend. You know, one of the gifts of cooking like this and giving gifts of food to friends is when you got food from a friend, it's like money in the bank. It is. You know, you always look forward to it. And you always, you know, it's the first thing to be eaten in the fridge because that food was made with love when it shows up on your doorstep. See what that looks like. While that's in there, I got time for exercise. Must be cooled off by now. Let's get her out of the toaster oven. Oh yeah, that is amazing. Look at the color on that. And there you have it. My quick and easy, but with some effort, and part of my dessert strategy, apple crisp. Let's give her a go. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah. Okay, that's super hot. You gotta wait. Okay, let's give this a go. That's delicious. So, give it a go. Let me know how it works out. In the meantime, let me know what your favorite go-to healthy dessert is, and put that in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button. And remember, keep maximizing life's small pleasures.